And we are live. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the stream. I hope you're all doing well. So don't be a stranger and say hi in chat. In the meantime, I just have a quick look at who is already here so far. Hello Audrey, hello Carbon14XYZ, and hello 3Dryly. And I'm sure, yeah, I see other people who are there but are not registered, so I can't see their name. But any case, they are there, that's what matters. So tonight we're back with some solid. Oh, hi Karim, how are you doing? We're back with some solid content. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about what could possibly be the best or worst job in the world, and that I happen to know quite well, which is the job of Parliamentary Assistant in the European Parliament. So I will tell you everything about the job, what an assistant does, how much money do they make, how to become an assistant, so everything. Hello Audrey. So for this, I initially wanted to just talk about it while playing like a game of Limbo, but then I figured that I would instead do an actual presentation so they could give you something to concentrate on and not get lost. So I did the presentation like today at lunchtime, so it's definitely not the best, but bear with me. So you see it's in the corner now. So as always, I will be keeping a close eye on the chat, so don't hesitate to ask me questions or to give me your opinion, so that it doesn't have to be a lecture. Also, if there are fellow assistants in the crowd, don't hesitate to pop in to share insight and stories about your experience as an assistant, and because as I will be saying a lot tonight, there are a lot of differences between assistants depending on the MEP, so other assistants may have a complementary or different experience of the job. So if you are there, please do share the experience. It will be interesting. So let's start at the beginning, so to say. What's an assistant? A parliamentary assistant. So you know Batman and Robin, the two heroes of Gotham City with a pretty messed up and borderline unhealthy relationship. Well, basically the MEP is Batman and the assistant is Robin, except that the assistant usually don't get killed with a crowbar by a laughing psychopath. But apart from that, pretty much the same thing. Hello, Alinor Gohan. Good evening and welcome. From this Zardo's comparison, the idea is that an assistant is the MEP's sidekick. The one will help the MEP achieve his goals and shine in the end. So as such, assistants are an essential cog in the European machine, but a different kind of cog than regular civil servants, because their biggest strength and their biggest weaknesses is the MEP. So the role of an assistant can go from being a mere secretary to being basically the MEP's personal death squad. And as such, they feel a very important role in the Euro bubble because of the potential power and influence that they may have. They are the primary interface with MEPs, and for people who are not in Parliament, having an assistant on your side makes life definitely easier when you have to deal with the Parliament, whenever it's to get information, to get contacts, this kind of thing. Assistants are your primary interface with the Parliament. But however badass they may be, MEPs usually need people to help them navigate the Parliament, handle administrative stuff, prepare parliamentary work at the technical level, handle communication, etc., etc. So basically they need someone to do everything to make sure that everything goes smoothly for the duration of the mandate. And they also need, of course, people to filter and prioritize the constant flow of information and requests that MEPs receive on a daily basis. I mean, if you're not an MEP or an assistant for that matter, you can't imagine the amount of emails that MEPs receive every day, hundreds of emails. So you need someone to filter and tell the MEP what is important and what is not. So This, of course, requires constant attention and, most importantly, an absolute trust from the MEP. A level of trust that cannot be achieved by regular European civil servants or staff from political groups. They can't do this. They are simply not made for this. And even if part of their job, of their own job, is to help out MEPs, it's nothing like what parliamentary assistants have to do. So that's why MEPs usually hire a team of parliamentary assistants who work exclusively for them. Well, there are some exceptions, but in principle, as a parliamentary assistant, work exclusively for one MEP to do all the tasks related to the mandate. So without that, MEPs would simply drown and be utterly and completely ineffective in their mandates. Personally, I've heard stories of MEPs who at the beginning of their mandate thought that they could handle everything by themselves and didn't hire any assistant in Brussels, only to crawl back 6 months later to hire people because they discovered it was just impossible. Good evening, Lexi Brussels. Welcome to the stream. So now that I explained a bit the basis of what is an assistant and why MEPs have people working for them in the first place, let's dive a bit deeper. So first thing you need to know is that there are in fact two kinds of assistants in the European Parliament, the local assistants and the accredited assistants. It's important because they each perform different roles and have a different legal status and rules applying to them. But you will find these assistants, whether local or accredited, in every single MEP team. That's the basis, just that they fulfill different roles. So first, you have what we call the local assistants, who you can recognize in Parliament with their green badge. I will just cover them rapidly here because tonight I will focus on the accredited assistants. So as the name implies, local assistants work in the MEP's constituency back in the member state. So they are usually not seen in Brussels or Strasbourg, and it's actually forbidden for them to have Brussels or Strasbourg as their usual working place, unless, of course, you're talking about Belgian MEPs from Brussels or MEPs from around Strasbourg. In this case, of course, local assistants have their place in the parliament, but otherwise it's forbidden. And the reason for that is that legally speaking, they are hired as a private contract between the MEP and the local assistant himself, following the rules of the member states of the MEP. So if you are a French MEP, you hire local assistant under French law. If you're a Swedish MEP, you hire local assistant under Swedish law, etc., etc. Which means that as far as local assistants are concerned, and that only applies for them, MEPs must follow the contract and social rules of these member states, which are not subject to the control of the European Parliament, or at least a control that is much lighter. Why is it important? For one very simple reason, it's because the salaries are simply not the same from one member state to another. So if you were allowing local assistants to normally work in Brussels, it would give MEPs from poorer countries a huge advantage because they could literally hire dozens of local assistants to do the policy work in Brussels, while an MEP from a richer country, so to say, could only hire 2 or 3, and so not cover the same ground. And I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying it. I mean, if you look at, for instance, Polish MEPs, you will see that many of them have a lot of local assistants, like 5, 6, or even more. And at some point, it became so absurd that they would. I think the all-time record was one MEP that had 43 local assistants. So you'll ask me, what's the point of having so many local assistants? Well, you can have legitimate reasons like entering a strong local presence, or also for more political reasons like hiring people who helped you during the campaign, so as a thank you, so to say. But now there are some rules that state that MEPs cannot use like more than 75% of their budget to hire local assistants, so it's not a free-for-all. To finish a bit on local assistants, what do they do? Well, they do anything that may help MEP at local level, whether it is to ensure and deal with the contact with citizens from the constituency, handle the local agenda whenever the MEP is not in Brussels, organize and handle groups of people from the constituency who will go visit the parliament in Brussels or Strasbourg. You will also find many communication or press advisors, as well as political advisors who will help the MEP position himself according to the national political situation. So in short, they can do many things as long as it doesn't relate to the MEP's policy work, which is done by another category of assistant, which is the accredited assistants, who will be the focus of tonight. So the accredited assistant, who I will call APAs, to cut it short, you will recognize them in Parliament with the light blue badges. So, like I said, they will be the main focus of tonight because this is the job I know best. Contrary to local assistants, APAs must be established in one of the seats of the European Parliament, so Brussels, Strasbourg, or Luxembourg. But you will, however, find like almost all APAs in Brussels. They also, contrary also to as local assistant, they work under special status, both to give them protection and avoid abuses. So APAs have a specific status defined under EU law, not like a regular EU civil servants, but still a EU one, so something in between, so to say. VTR Brussels asks, since how long are you an APA? So I started as an APA in 2013. So I have a bit of experience, so you could say, about the job. Where was I? Yeah, about the legal status between of APAs. So the contracts of APAs and everything that concerns APAs is regulated directly and exclusively by the European Parliament. So their contract must follow European Parliament rules and not national one. So for instance, a few examples of things that are defined strictly in the Parliament rules is that there are fixed and predetermined pay grades that MEPs cannot divert from. While in the case of local assistants, they have a bit more wiggle room, so to say. And they must use at least 25% of their budget to pay APAs, to ensure that APAs are actually paid fairly. Also, like most EU civil servants, they pay their tax. APAs pay their taxes directly to the EU and not to Belgium. And they also have a special status in the eyes of Belgium. So, for instance, assistants, APAs, do not have to register at the commune in Brussels, but instead they have a special ID card from the Belgian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because they are considered as EU civil servants, even if they're not exactly that. In terms of their role, APAs are so Lord Bartu, yeah. How many times have you lost your badge? I think I lost it like a couple of times, maybe 3 times, not more. I'm not. Usually, I was always careful, but when you lose your badge, it's kind of a pain because you can't enter the parliament. You have to go request, either ask a colleague to make you enter and give you a temporary badge, and you have to do the entire procedure. It takes weeks, so it's don't lose your badge. That's pretty much the moral of the story. Don't lose your badge. But I would say that usually assistants lose their badge less than MEPs. But well, that's although I have a lot of colleagues who also regularly lost their badge. So yeah, like I was saying, APAs are the assistants who fight in the trenches alongside their MEP. I will discuss that in more details in a moment, but they are those who do the policy and parliamentary work and handle everything related to the daily functioning of the European Parliament. So, like I said, they are the main interface between MEPs and the outside world. And one point before going forward, something important. Audrey asked, do you have a special passport? No, we don't have a special passport. MEPs can have a special, it's not a passport, it's a laissez-passer. So they are allowed to have one, but it's usually if they use it at the airport, most people at the custom don't even know what this is. So it's more recommended to use for MEPs to use their national passport. But no, assistants do not have a special passport. We just have a special ID card that is only valid in Belgium. Outside Belgium, it has literally no value. What was I saying? Yes, a point that is important and that is common to both local assistants and APAs. It is that whatever they do as part of their job, it must relate exclusively to the exercise of the MEP's mandate. It means that you cannot hire assistants to work for the party, for instance. You cannot hire an assistant and have him do nothing. Assistants may have parallel functions in some categories, as long as it doesn't lead to a conflict of interest that is incompatible with the institution. So, for instance, you can have assistants who are elected officials, for instance, in a city council, but they have to notify and ask authorization to the parliament specifically, and then the parliament says if they can do that or not while being assistant. Likewise, at times of the elections, an assistant cannot work on the re-election campaign of his MEP. In practice, there's a bit of a gray area because, by definition, I mean, there's always a bit of some form of overlap between the MEP's mandate and some minor political work. So there is a bit of a gray area, even if it's not encouraged. But the bottom line is the actual job of the assistant could not be to work for national politics. And actually, if an MEP use APAs to the benefit of the party, it's a criminal offense. So, for instance, far-right MEPs were known for doing that, to basically use the parliament to indirectly finance the national political work, and it led to a number of judiciary intervention a few years ago. So, I'm talking about the far-right, but they are not the only ones who have done that. You will find these kind of practices in pretty much all political groups, from right to left. But the difference is that the far right are pretty much industrialized the entire process, and MEPs were actually being required by the party to hire people for the party as parliamentary assistant, even if they did little to no work at all for the EU. And sometimes they never even showed up once in the parliament. So that was highly illegal, of course, and it was misuse of public money. So now that we covered a bit the essentials, let's dive again into what APAs actually do for a living. And the answer to that question is, it depends. The missions of an assistant, as well as everything else, are determined by the MEP, depending on the expectation, the style, and the skill of each member of the team. Let's say that for all intents and purposes, an MEP is God for his assistant. And just like there are plenty of different gods, there are plenty of different MEPs, and there are therefore different types of APAs, from the purely administrative one to the head of cabinet. But Lexi Bruxelles, did you have another job before becoming an APA? No, I started straight from after my studies. I became an intern and then an assistant. But that's a good question, because I will talk about the whole thing about how to become an assistant a bit later. But in my case, no, I started right after my studies. So even if, like I said, things can vary from MEP to MEP, there are still common tasks that are required from APA. So, for instance, administrative tasks like answering calls, dealing with the mailbox, organizing meeting, order a driver, make dinner reservation, you name it, everything like the small stuff to handle an office. Then you also have the technical and legislative works, which is acquiring knowledge on the European processes and procedure, as well on the topics the MEP is working on, following the Parliamentary Working Committee, preparing the plenaries, drafting amendments, meeting lobbies, going to trilogues, etc., etc. So everything related to the actual policy work. You also have, obviously, communication work, which is talking or at least setting up the communication strategy of MEPs, preparing speeches, using social medias, etc., etc. So this role of communication advisor, so to say, is a role that is increasingly important as MEPs are more and more social media savvy. And this is something that we know you can notice, especially at this mandate. There was a big jump in terms of social media savviness between this mandate and the previous one. Also political work, obviously, so advising the MEP on the political strategy overall, negotiating with other MEPs and other institutions, etc., etc. I also mention it because unfortunately it happens still, is that sometimes you can be asked to do things that have no relation with the mandate, but instead are just there to facilitate the personal life of the MEP. So I'm not talking about fetching coffee, which is not an issue in itself, but rather like doing groceries, pick up dry cleaning, look up stuff for the family of the MEP, etc., etc. It's quite rare nowadays, but it can still happen. So that's why I mention it, but it's very rare, I would say. So like I said, even if everything depends of the MEP, there are, you could say that there are 4 types of assistants. The administrative ones, so they would do secretariat, the political advisors, the communication advisors, and the let's say the more policy advisors. Even if most assistants are in fact a combination of all of this, and their core mission in the end is to advise and execute, with a strong emphasis on policy and representation. But the bottom line of all this is pretty much this. The only job of an assistant, its only reason to exist is to do whatever MEP needs to perform his duty. And those needs vary from MEP to MEP. You will have some MEPs, especially like veteran ones, or those who are professionally extremely qualified in their field. They do pretty much everything themselves, and the assistants may just be there to deal with the administrative and communication stuff. On the other end, you will have MEPs who need highly competent assistants on the technical side, and who therefore rely a lot on their assistants. So everything is possible, and it's up to the assistant to adapt to the needs of the MEP. So, having said all that, let's talk about the one thing that, well, let's be honest, interests everyone. Money. Have you always been happy in your job so far? I will talk as well about that at the end, but overall, yeah. Despite the more difficult side of the job, I've always seen myself as lucky, and I enjoyed my job as an assistant. But it's not the case for everyone. I will talk about that a bit towards the end because of the relationship with the MEP. So let's talk money. So obviously, assistant costs a lot of money. Exactly, already the juicy part. So assistant costs money, and MEPs do not pay their staff out of their own pockets. So for that, the Parliament actually provides each MEP with around 25,000 euros per month to pay everything related to their staff. But important precision, the money is not sent to the MEP's account, obviously to prevent any kind of abuses. The money remains in the possession of the European Parliament, who then transfers the money according to the necessary expenses. Why does the parliament handle that? Well, in practice, for a very simple practical reason, is that when an MEP hires an assistant, it's not just a bilateral relationship. Even if the MEP is free to choose, is completely free to choose his assistants, to hire one, he actually needs to ask the parliament to hire the assistant on his behalf with a standardized EU contract. So that's why the parliament also has a direct role in the relationship between MEPs and their assistants, especially when it comes to money. So with those 25k a month, the MEP must pay his assistants, whether they are local or APAs. He must pay the interns. He must pay like potential external service providers, so things like communication agencies, and also pay the missions of their staff. What we call missions, is whenever someone from the staff is asked to travel outside the normal place of work, to pay for travel expenses, hotel expenses, etc., etc. So, for instance, when an APA goes to Strasbourg plenary, they are going on a mission and they are paid extra for that. So MEPs have to keep money on the side for this. And because of that, even if 25k sounds like a lot, and is a lot, in fact, it can quickly add up if an MEP has a sizable team. And therefore, many MEPs are actually careful about their allowances, bearing in mind that the money that has not been used at the end of the year is transferred to the next year or returned to the parliament. It's returned to the parliament if there are more like that 42k euros left in the account from memory. Little Miss Derry asks, how about MEP missions? Does this count in this budget? MEP mission, I suppose you're talking about when the MEP himself goes outside. So no, that is a different budget line. So two different things. When an MEP goes to Strasbourg, it's not a mission for him, because it's actually part of his job, and the seat of the parliament is Strasbourg, so he has to show up there. The only thing is that they will get reimbursed for the travel cost. That's the thing, and they also for the hotel, this kind of thing, but they don't get extra money for that. MEP, generally speaking, MEP never receive extra money. They get okay, you're thinking of intermission type mission in third country. So when MEPs are traveling as part of delegation in third country, they don't get extra money for that. They get reimbursed of the travel expenses with some rules. For instance, like depending on the travel distance, they can take they can't take like first class airplane tickets, for instance. They also have a limited budget line, so they also have to manage that. They can't like go for free everywhere whenever they want. But it's a different budget line than the one for staff. Staff is only salaries for assistants, service providers, and the missions of the assistants. Party all the time. Yeah, well, I don't know if it's party all the time, but in any case, it's not party at the expense of the parliament. Audrey asking, do you receive end of year bonuses? No, we do not have anything like this. You can negotiate pay raises, but there is nothing like end of year bonuses. It's it doesn't exist for in parliament. And I mean, I was going to say for assistant, but I'm not even sure if it exists for any EU civil servants. You can get like other kind of bonuses, so to say. So like allowances if the assistant is married, if he has kids under 6, they get a bit extra money. But I kept it to keep it simple. What you see on the grid is the base salary, and there are no end of year bonuses or stuff like that. But yeah. Going back to the budget line, 25k a month, actually it can go fast. Vitia Brussels, what has been your salary evolution over the years? Do APA usually start grade 1? Well, I'm actually going to talk about that, because I will go back to that in a minute. So APAs are paid according to a fixed pay grade system called grades. There are 19 grades that MEPs can choose from. according to the competencies of the assistant and what is available, the money available on the allowances. So obviously they can't put everyone in grade 19 because there is simply not enough room on the allowances. So just to give the overall vision of the grid, without, like I said, taking into account any kind of extra allowances that can come on top of the base salary, you have grade 1, which is the lowest grade, about 1,600 euro net to the assistant, and grade 19, which is about 6,300 net for the assistant. And the average grade for assistant, and I am not sure for this mandate. For the previous mandate, I'm sure, but not this one. But at the previous mandate, the average grade was around grade 10, which amounted to 3,400 euros net to the assistant. So how do you decide the grade? The grade is a result of negotiation between the MEP and the assistant, according to the competence of the assistant and what room you have on the allowances. So if someone is hired for the first time, like you got out of an internship, or it's actually your first job, or you do like very low level, I would say, kind of work, so you're only doing secretary stuff, yes, it's perfectly possible to be hired at grade 1 or grade 2. And then it's up to, with time, usually you will start lower, at the lowest at the beginning of the mandate, that then you can negotiate potential pay raises during the mandate to reflect the fact that you did good work, that the MEP is happy with you, etc., etc. And going back, I think someone was asking the evolution of the salary. Oh yeah, okay, it was you. Salary evolution over the years. Well, I won't go into details, into specific grades, but I was never downgraded as an assistant. Actually, I even think that there are rules that prevent MEPs from downgrading assistants out of the blue without good reasons. But it's like I said, it all depends of the room on the allowances and whether the MEP thinks that you are worth it, so to say. But all in all, if you look at the figures, assistants have actually quite a good salary in general, provided that they can negotiate it with their MEP. Which is not always the case. I've seen like veteran assistant with salaries well below grade 10, which is, like I said, the average during last mandate. And you can try to renegotiate, but before anyone asks, it's very rare to have assistants on very high grades like grade 19, because it would become very costly for the MEP, since, like, as you see, like a grade 19 it takes a third of the entire allowance, so that's quite for a single assistant, so that's a lot. And also the parliament itself, to avoid situation where MEPs would overpay their assistants, they have some special rules. So for instance, after grade 14, the MEP and the assistant need to provide proof that the assistant holds a higher education degree, like a master degree or PhD, this kind of stuff, to prevent like someone who 18-year-old guy coming up to the parliament and earning a grade 19 out of the blue, which would be suspicious. But that's pretty much it on the money side. Oops. So now we're going to go to the part on how one does become an assistant. For starter, is there a school to become assistant? The answer, as usual, is yes and no. MEPs are free to hire who they want as their assistants, regardless of the education background, because it all depends of your profile and need of the job. So I have seen assistants with no higher education or any degree for that matter, or I mean, any degree related to politics or the EU, but they became assistant nonetheless because they were good at the job. However, given the general nature of the job of assistant, you will find that people with a low political sciences or economy background form the bulk of the APAs. And like all EU staff, whether it's Parliament, Commission, anywhere, EU staff, alumni of the Collège de Bruges, which is a school that is specialized in the EU. So these alumni are well represented into the Parliament. But then again, there are no absolute rules. MEP may very well need an assistant with very specialized knowledge, and therefore favor people with that very specific background. So, for instance, let's say the MEP is specialized in, I don't know, agriculture, and he decides that he wants someone who actually studied agriculture, not a farmer necessarily, but someone who studied agriculture, agricultural economy, this kind of thing, and so he will hire an assistant with that background. But all in all, assistants is a very, very competitive job market. And getting the job actually requires both talent and luck. So like I explained earlier, APAs tend to be jacks of all trade, or they can be highly specialized, depending on how the MEP wants to organize his team. But in any case, there are some basic requirements to be good at the job of APA. So first, flexibility. It seems obvious, but it's a must, because the very nature of the APA job is to meet the requirements of your MEP and of the task at hand. So if a task requires you to arrive very early and to leave very late, or to work during the weekend, you just do it. No questions asked, you do it. In terms of mindset, it's also important to be able to go from one topic to another without any worry, and to know how to improvise. So for instance, if your MEP needs to give a speech again on agriculture policy at the end of the week, you need to know where to get the information and how to get on with it. So flexibility is a must. Neg NL, so I was very lucky. Well, it depends on what, but depends on what. But yeah, I never considered myself unlucky as an assistant. Second good thing to be as an assistant is reliable, because the job requires a high level of mutual trust between the APA and the MEP. Otherwise, it simply cannot work in the long run. So if your MEP tells you to do something or asks you for information, he must be able to rely on you. Likewise, if you are in contact with people outside of the parliament, whether it's lobby, commission, journalists, anyone, being reliable will be an asset for you and for your MEP. Okay, you said getting the job requires skill and luck. Hence my comment. Yes, I do consider myself lucky. In this sense, yes, I do. I definitely do consider myself lucky. It was about being at the right place at the right time. It's part of luck. But yeah, I was lucky. In that sense, I was lucky. Even if you can, and I will tell you in a moment about that, you can. Let's say, maximize the amount of luck that you have. But I will talk about that in the next section. Then again, obviously, you need to be a bit skilled to be an assistant. You need a good combination of analytical, communication, negotiation skills. You must know how to write. You must have an understanding of legal and political skills in order to perform correctly the job. Again, depending on what the MEP is expecting from you. Patience, again, something that is important, because working for MEP and with people from different political opinion and member states, for that matter, can be frustrating. So you need to be able to take a step back, accept that it's not necessarily personal, and find another way around the issue. Compromise is the key word in the European Parliament. So it requires cool-headed and rational people most of the time, and sometimes actually being fiery can help your case. But in general, patience is a virtue. And finally, modesty, because at all time you need to remember that you are an APA. So however good you might be, you're not the star of the show. The rock star is and will always be the MEP. So keep in mind that working in European politics doesn't make you a big deal. 1A of APA stands for assistant. Don't forget it. So let's say that you check all the boxes so far. Like I was stating, Nega, how do you maximize your chances to make your place in a super competitive market? Well, lucky for you, I'm going to give you some tips if you ever want to become an APA. So, first tip, get an internship, and if possible, in the European Parliament. It sounds obvious, but it's important. Because however smart you may be, all that brain will be useless if you don't know how our little piece of hell called the Parliament and your bubble works in practice. And the only way to learn these things is by being in the trenches and surviving it. 90% of the things I know about the Eurobubble today, I did not learn at school. I learned it once I was in Brussels doing my internship and then working as an assistant. So the first reason, then again, the first reason to do an internship is very simple. Is that MEPs and their staff are busy people. The last thing they need is to hire a colleague. They will need to babysit for a year before it actually starts becoming useful. So when looking at an application, the first thing people will look at is whether you already have an experience in Brussels and or in the Parliament. The second reason to do an internship is also very simple. It's because MEPs and their staff are busy people. Many MEPs and many staff members, they will prefer hiring someone like a former intern that a colleague is recommending rather than publishing a public ad and having to go through hundreds of application letters. So if you manage to secure an internship in Brussels, or even better, in the Parliament, it gives you a platform to grow from, where you will be able to learn things, meet people, and maybe have the beginning of a good reputation, which are all worth gold. It doesn't mean that it's impossible to be hired without having been an intern or having worked in the bubble before. Many assistants are hired directly from outside the bubble, especially at the beginning of the mandates. But having done an internship is a tremendous bonus in a market where basically everyone is at least as smart as you are. Well, then again, it begs the question, well, it's nice to say that you need to get an internship, but how do you get an internship in the first place? Well, the following tips applies both to requesting an internship and being hired as an MEP, even if obviously the level of requirement for interns will be much lower than for a full-fledged assistant. So first, you need, assuming that you want to be an APA, you need to decide how you want to pitch yourself to the MEP and within the team, according to your own strength and possible information that you may have regarding the MEP. So by simplifying things to the extreme, you could say that there are two profiles, the political profile and the technical profile. So starting with the political profile, you will put all your eggs in the basket of political engagement. So you will put forward your political, social, communication, and networking kind of skill. Little Miss Dairy, are interns paying now? A few years back, some were still unpaid. I'm actually not sure. I believe that now interns must be paid in the Parliament. They can't be paid above what would correspond to a grade 1. So let's go back a bit in time. Come on, go back in time. So they can't be paid like above like 1,500 euros, because then the parliament would consider that actually you're hiring an assistant, but without the legal security for the assistant. So they would force you to either hire the person as an assistant or to pay less the intern. So there's a maximum. As for the minimum, I'm not sure. I think that it's mandatory now to pay the interns, but I'm not sure. If someone knows, do tell, but I can't tell you. Unfortunately, I can't tell you with certainty. But now I would say that it's common to have interns being paid, except of course like if you have an intern that is there like for a week or two or a month, then it might be different, but usually assistants stay between 3 to 6 months, and in this case they are paid up to 1,500 euros. So going back to the political profile, whenever you're pitching yourself, whether as an intern or more likely as an assistant, the goal of the maneuver is to show that you have a very high level of political compatibility with the MEP you're applying to, and how you can be politically useful to him. So that means like stating that you're a militant or an activist in the political movement of the MEP, or an organization that is close to it. You can be saying that you worked closely before with another political personality who is close to the MEP, or that you're overall in line with the MEP political engagement and position. What else would be interesting for you to say in that case? In terms of background, in this case, political sciences, communication, and journalism would be good background to have for this. But given that the focus here is highly political, actually you could have any kind of other education background, or even no education background at all, and still remain relevant for the application. Why? Because you can have someone with a PhD that have less political sense and skill than someone without any kind of diploma. So the end game, whenever you're pitching yourself as a political profile, is to make the MEP think that with you at his side, he will be basically unstoppable. It will be like a house of cards. In reality, Martin Selmayr will come begging for mercy. Then you have what I would call the technical profile. Here, obviously, technical background mostly. So you will be putting for European law, European politics, or a field in which the MEP is specialized in terms of parliamentary work. The idea being to show that you know how the institution work, and especially the parliament, and that can be done through the diplomas or previous work experience, and showing that you understand what the job of an assistant is and how the parliament actually works. And in terms of useful formation, again, political sciences, law, Collège de Bruges, European studies, or other specialized formation would be the requirement. And here the end game is to make the MEP believe that with you, he will be such an expert that the Commission and the Council will have nightmares of doing trilogues with you, which, well, usually is not the case. But like I said, those are overly simplified profile. I'm not telling you to completely stick to one. The composition of an MEP's office is entirely at the discretion of the MEP, and they may prefer some profile or not. Some like to have only political assistants, other only to have technical assistants, and the majority a bit of both. Personally, if I was to receive an application from someone going all in on the political profile, I would see that as pure arrogance and begin to dismiss it. But I know other offices that would, on the contrary, be very interested in this kind of profile. So then again, it very much depends of the MEP. Audrey asking, what are the mandatory languages? English, MEP mother tongues, French maybe, or German? You have no requirements in terms of languages. However, obviously, it's highly recommended to speak at least your MEP's mother tongue and English at the very least. Other languages like French or German are strong bonuses, especially when you're working for non-French MEPs, because the Parliament administration is not to a good extent that you have a lot of Belgian civil servants in the Parliament, so they tend to speak French. So speaking French actually is helpful whenever you're dealing with the Parliament administration. And in terms of requirements, besides language, the only thing I can think of is that in principle you should be EU national. So you must have the European citizenship. It's possible to become an assistant without having the European nationality, but in this case, the MEP will need to ask for a special authorization of the Parliament to do that. But besides that, there are no requirements on this. Then again, the MEPs are free to hire their staff. It's part of the freedom to exercise their mandate, which is the first and foremost principle of MEPs towards the Parliament. But yeah, going back to the profile, they are not absolute requisites. And the safe bet would be to actually combine a bit of both profile to maximize your chances, because hardcore political advisors do not form the bulk of MEP offices. So to start with, there are less spots available for this kind of profile. And the technical work in itself is impacted by the political stance of every MEP. So a technical genius with zero political sense would be close to useless to an MEP. Next, advice I can give you is obviously to tailor your approach to the MEP you're applying to. I won't insult your intelligence by telling you how to do that, but it's still important, and there's still a couple of things to keep in mind. The key thing in any job application, even more so for an MEP, is to personalize it and accept the fact that the person reading your application does not have the time to do so. Just passing by to say hi in the name of Rate R European Federation. Hello, come back anytime soon. You're more than welcome. I've been trying to make some advertisement about the channel on Reddit, so happy to see that some people are actually reading my posts. So thank you. So what was I saying? So yeah, accept the fact that MEPs and their assistants do not have time to read applications. So if you want to matter, two things: information is power, and you have to make a surgical strike. First, make it personal. So if you are hired, you will be working directly for one person only. So you better make sure that this person feels special when reading your application. A copy-paste application will be spotted immediately by the person who processes it, whether the MEP or the assistant, and it will not leave a good impression. I mean, there are parts that obviously you copy-paste, but if the entire application is a copy-paste, an assistant will see it immediately and begin to dismiss it. So pick your targets wisely and dig deep when searching about them. The idea being that you have to know everything there is to know about an MEP before even starting to work for the MEP. So to do that, that means like going on his profile on the Parliament website, lurking on his website. That advice against copy paste is valid for all jobs. Actually, yeah. I mean, everything I'm telling you right now is valid for every kind of job. I mean, researching the place you want to work at, that's kind of basic, but it's even more basic when you're working for a single person. You have to make it personal, but you're totally right. This is valid for any kind of job application, generally speaking. But in case MEP, dig deep to know what they do, what they work on. So, for instance, there is no need for you to say in your application letter that you are a complete badass in agriculture policy if the MEP you are applying for actually works in foreign affairs. So you'll miss your target by a few light years, and you will end up at the bottom of the pile. So the whole idea of this is that to have the person who will process your application feel like your profile fits perfectly the MEP's need. Audrey, there's a Reddit channel too with EU nerds. What is it? All I found was Brexit related or anti-EU weirdos. Oh, there are actually quite a few Reddit specialized on that. I will once I'm done with the presentation, I will go quickly on Reddit and I will post the link on that, or I will send you on Twitter the links. I have you on Twitter, so I will send you the links. But there are, I would say, 4 or 5 dedicated Reddit board. Reddit board dedicated to the EU, but I'll send you the link to it, Audrey. Don't worry. Second principle: make it short. So, like I said, we all have better things to do than reviewing job applications. So don't send 10 pages long applications. Otherwise, we might just ask you for a meeting just to bash your skull in and make you pay for making us lose half an hour going through these 10 pages. And also bear in mind that an application will not be read thoroughly at first, especially if there are many of them. The assistant will read quickly through it to spot only the weird and interesting things, the things that pop out. So if you want to survive the first round of selection, make sure that you only focus on few important and interesting things. The goal at the early stages is not to make a big mistake, but to create interest. On the later stage, you will have plenty of chance to develop your candidacy in your meeting and explore other aspects of your profile. But keep it short, keep it sweet. And final thing, spend the time. For an application that will be read in 2 minutes maximum, and that's a larger estimate, there should be hours of work behind the application, at least. So take the time, it's all for your own benefit. And once you've done all this, so you prepared your CV, you prepared your cover letter, just send it by email to the officer of the MEP, and a few days later, maybe make a phone call and ask the assistant if the application has been received. It will annoy the assistant, but well, that's part of the job, and maybe gather some information. And after that, all you have to do is to wait and see. If you are contacted again by the MEP, congrats. But the next stage may vary from MEP to MEP. Some will make one interview and then decide on whether they want you or not as an intern or as an assistant. Other will give you tests to do further selection. So, for instance, they will ask you to prepare a speech or a briefing note for the MEP to narrow down further the number of candidates. Next up, okay. So, for the final part of the presentation, I will dive a bit deeper into the assistant as an actual experience. What does it mean to be an assistant on a personal level? What makes it both the best and the worst job in the world? SimSim. Do spontaneous applications to MEP or to EU political families have a good chance of getting through? I know that the main window is right after the election, but there's some APA turnover every 3 years roughly. Yeah, I mean, especially if it's to get the actual job, just send spontaneous applications. Worst case scenario, they will keep you in the database. They might keep it on the side. So yeah, it can work. At least it could give you an occasion to have information, because you can then call the assistant and will tell you, oh well, no, our office is full, but I know that another MEP is looking for an assistant, or someone will be leaving in a few months, maybe come back at this time, this kind of thing. So you don't have anything to lose with spontaneous applications to MEPs, at least to become an assistant. But yeah, usually the big turnover for assistants are beginning of the mandates, roughly mid mandates, and end of mandate. But you can have changes. That's also why it's important to at least have a first experience in Brussels or be established in Brussels, because it will give you access to gossip. So you will be, well, now it's not the case because, well, lockdown and all that in COVID, but things that people will usually do is on Thursday evening, they would go to Plux and have a few beers with people, and that's where they will know, oh, well, someone left this office, or maybe this, you can try this or that, etc., etc. So having boots on the ground again is quite important, and having friends in the actual parliament is also good. Lexi Blossort, in your experience, do applicants have better chances to get hired when they come from the same country as the MEP? Yes. It's not an absolute rule, but in general, yes. The reason for that is convenience, because the MEP will assume, wrongly or not, that someone who does not come from the member state won't know his mother tongue properly. But then again, it depends on member state, because if you come, if you are MEPs coming from smaller member states, we'll see that as a less important criteria, because I mean, they know that they come from a small country. They will prefer to have people with experience, as long as people are fluent in English or other useful languages. But yes, generally speaking, it's better to come from the same country as the MEP. But if you have like a coup de cœur on an MEP that is not from your member state, and that you either speak fluently his language or speak English fluently, try it. I mean, you have nothing to lose, really. You have really nothing to lose. And your second question, okay, I know enough APIs to quit or change up within the mandate. So yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's still a lot of turnover, even if the big ones are beginning, middle, and end of mandate. And Audrey asked, have you seen some APIs pathing from one MEP to another? Yes, that's definitely something that can happen. Not a lot, but it can happen. I've seen it happening. Especially at the time of transition, beginning and in between mandates, you will have an assistant who will change MEP. So it's perfectly possible. Where was I? Yes. So talking about the personal experience, well, not my personal experience, but the experience as a personal, it doesn't make sense. You understand me. One key, what makes it both the best and the worst job in the world. So one key element to understand assistants is the nature of their relationship with their MEP. It is a highly personal relationship, and therefore it's a question of a compatibility, meaning that one APA may fit an MEP but not another, because the MEP has different needs, different characters. They are different people. And the reason why there is such a strong emphasis on trust, I mean, like I wrote in the presentation, trust. That's the first and last word of any relationship between an MEP and an APA is very logical, because as an MEP will literally entrust his career and his credibility to his assistant. And on the other side, to do the extra mile necessary to fulfill the function, an assistant needs to trust his MEP, but also know that he is trusted in return. So trust is everything in between between an MEP and an assistant. And actually, that's in the contract. An MEP can break a contract and basically fire an assistant if there is what we call a breach of trust, because the MEP stops trusting the assistant to do the work. In this case, you will have to prove it to an extent, but it's a ground to actually fire an assistant, because the job requires absolute trust. This means that the level of relationship can vary from one MEP. You can have relationships that are strictly professional or that are almost friendly with the MEP. That means you can have MEPs who literally throw stuff in your face, or on the contrary, cover your mistakes. It's really a symbiotic relationship that is by nature necessary for the success of the MEP. Because for all intents and purposes, the assistant is the first and last line of defense for an MEP. If the assistant breaks, there's nothing between the world and the MEP, and that's where things can get ugly. And on the other side, for all intents and purposes, an MEP can boost or end the career of an assistant. And generally speaking, so they are intertwined, and an attack on an assistant is seen as an attack on the MEP, and an attack on the MEP is seen as an attack on the assistant. They are completely intertwined. And this situation, well, it leads to also to very surreal and funny relationships, especially when MEPs detach themselves from reality from time to time. You have the weirdest requests and reaction. I mean, I basically build my Tumblr and my entire reputation on this surreal and funny relationship that is the relation between an APA and his MEP. So, on the good side, if you have a balanced relationship with your MEP, it can be great. I mean, the assistant will benefit greatly from having an MEP who can be trusted to do his job, because the MEP also needs to do his part. And it's rewarding as well, especially if the MEP is ready to highlight the assistant's contribution and share some of the praises. So, for instance, something that you will regularly see, I would say, is when an MEP has a report and the report is adopted in committee and later in plenary. The MEPs usually do a short speech, like to thank the shadows, and they will also usually thank their assistant and the staff, like the committee staff, for instance, who help them do the report. So that's the small marks of appreciation that's, well, are good to have as an assistant, and also are good career-wise, because, well, it's a way for the MEP to endorse you, to tell to the world, this person is good, he does his job well, I'm happy with this person. And on the other side, if you have a relationship with the MEP that is imbalanced and borderline or even completely abusive, then it's complete hell on earth. You have many assistants who have suffered from burnouts, getting to the point where they were getting physically ill, or suffer all kinds of harassment from their MEP. And the nature of the relationship between the MEP and the assistant gives the MEP pretty much all the power, making it a nightmare for the assistant to fight back if he does not want to give up and just resign. You have internal mechanism in the parliament to deal with harassment cases, and truth be told, they have improved a bit since the Me Too movement a few years ago in Brussels. But still, the fact is that sanctions against MEP who do or are guilty of harassment rely on the decision of other MEPs, people from the MEPs who belong to what is called the bureau. So it's the group of MEPs who are in charge of supervising the activity of the parliament as a whole. And some of them are charged with dealing with harassment issues and stuff like that, but they are MEPs. So that makes it complicated, or it doesn't. Okay, I'm not going to say the word because I can't pronounce it, but it makes it complicated for assistants to speak up when they are harassed. After saying all that, I mean, if becoming an assistant is pretty, I mean, I make it sound like playing the Russian roulette. What's the point of becoming one? They are good and bad in the job. For me, the biggest advantage of the job of assistant is of an intellectual and social nature, because being an assistant, it's not totally a job. It's way more than that. It's a life experience, really, especially when you are young. I usually describe it as doing Erasmus, except that you're being paid. So, like I said, it's an interesting job. It can get really intense, but it's also very rewarding. You will get to work on various topics with the chance to learn actually a lot of things, which may be useful for you later in your professional life. And it's, in any case, stimulating on the intellectual level. You will also get to see how politics and European politics work from the inside, with a real chance to actually have an impact on it. Through the legislative work that you perform with your MEP, because then again, APA can yield quite a lot of influence if the MEP entrusts them and that they are good at it. They can really have an impact on actual legislation. And socially speaking, you will get to live with people from 27 or more culture, and have a chance to make friends with people from everywhere. Those of you who are from the bubble will know that pretty well, but the bubble is a small world in itself. People easily get to know each other, regardless of their origin or even of their political opinion. I mean, that's the principle of going to Prox on Thursday evening. And I mean, another thing that I enjoyed personally when I was an assistant is the opportunity to talk about Europe. And the EU in general, whenever there was groups of visitors coming to the Parliament at the invitation of the MEP. Always enjoy that. I mean, it's not surprising. Now I'm doing it on Twitch, but enjoying doing that with groups. It's especially kids. Kids are usually funny as a group of visitors. And if you go into more practical advantages, well, of course, like I said, in terms of remuneration, depending on the size of your MEP's team, it can be quite well paid, especially given the age of most APAs. I mean, most APAs are between 25 and 35 in general, so rather young. Little Miss Dairy, will there ever be Plux again? Oh yes, I sure hope so. I mean, I don't care if it's Plux with masks, but yeah, I want Plux to be back. I want it. Maybe if we're lucky, before summer, they will slowly start again. Pretty sure that people will be keen to have an actual drink in bars, even if it's. I'm curious to see how the bars and Place Lux will have fared, having been closed for so long. But well, that's unfortunate, and we'll have to see. Audrey, where is the virtual Plux? Drop a comment if you have any idea. Well, the virtual Plux, I would say, is on your Zoom account or your WhatsApp or your Skype or whatever. It is possible. Yeah, so salary can be good as an assistant, of course. And funny part, not funny, nice part is that you can get to travel a bit, and not only in Strasbourg. So I don't remember who was mentioning that earlier, if it was Lexi Brussels or Little Miss Daisy, about the delegation travels in third countries. So sometimes you can accompany your member state, your MEP in these travel. So like you get to travel a bit. Lexi Brussels, from my experience, it's very beneficial if your MEP listens to you, especially if you have real concerns on his speech or on an interview she wants to do. Yeah, absolutely. That's the basic work of an assistant. I mean, you're here to advise the MEP. He gets requests, he wants to do it, it's your job. It's actually your job to share concerns that you may have if you think that it may backlash or it's not relevant or anything, or that it may rub on the wrong side another MEP. So no, that's it's your role, and it's good if the MEP listens to you, and it's a process because I mean, even if a MEP hires you, he will not fully trust you from day one. It will be a process. You will get to know each other, and as time passes, he will trust you more and more and more and more. But in the end, of course, it's up to him. But I would consider that your duty as an assistant is to share any concern that you may have if they are doing a speech or an interview that you think is not useful or beneficial to him. That's definitely part of the job. And on the wrong side of being an assistant, well, it's a demanding job, potentially stressful, and by nature unpredictable, because there are no routine. You don't know what's coming next for you, and you don't have necessarily the most secure position, because every 5 years, assuming that you get hired at the beginning of the mandate, but every 5 years, you don't know what's going to happen to you. You don't know if your MEP is gonna be elected again. You don't know if he wants to be elected again, which adds another layer of stress, especially when you have a family, which is the case of quite a few assistants. So it's the stress is really something not to be underestimated, especially when you go into crunch time, when you are like in trilogues or things like that, and you have a lot of pressure. I have memories of putting myself in situations that are borderline insane, like going to the parliament every single day of the week and weekend for like a full month, or doing like all-nighters, like 2 days, 3 days in a row, because I'm working on trilogues or something like that. It can get pretty crazy. So that's something to be aware of. But then again, it can be balanced by other times being much more quiet. Like I said, there is no routine. You can have 1 week where everything will be very chill, not a lot of meetings. The MP is not there. It means you can arrive a bit later, maybe arrive a bit later in the morning and leave a bit earlier in the evening. And the next week, have a completely nightmarish week where you are on deck non-stop, and it's all in flux. It's a constant flux, and I mean that's part of the job. And personally, I mean, the fact that there is no routine is something that I enjoy. But well, that's me, and that's not for everyone. My point is that assistant can be a good job, but it's not for everyone, clearly. One final thing is, if you get tired of being an assistant, what's next? Well, you'll be happy to know that assistants are actually a very valuable commodity, especially if you made a name for yourself, because you will have acquired over the years technical, political, and practical knowledge that is recognized out there, especially in the Euro bubble. But that value can fade quickly if you're not fast enough to seize opportunities. People can forget you quickly once you leave Parliament. So while there are no what I would call standard career path, I mean, after all, the job is anything but standard, there are still obvious possibilities. So former assistant can join the institution themselves for, I would say, more quiet and predictable job, whether it's in the parliament as political advisors or the commission as civil servants. They can also go back home and work for the government in the ministry or something. Another path that is also popular is lobbying. You are obviously a prime candidate for lobbying, lobbies of all kinds, because they value your knowledge of the legislative system, they value your potential network in the parliament, they value your technical expertise, etc., etc. So in the end, it always depends on the opportunities that are given to you or that you create for yourself, but you have options. And very final word for me. So to conclude, the $1 million question: is parliamentary assistant a good job? In my experience, I would say that the balance weights toward this being a good job, but I completely accept that other people will have other perspective on that, because every MEP is different and every experience is different. And like I was mentioning earlier, when things go bad, they can go really bad. But yeah, like I said, explained all along, it's a very specific job. It's not for everyone. And if you think it's not for you, forcing yourself into that job, knowing that it can make you miserable, is a bet that I would not recommend, especially since it can have an impact on your health and your well-being. Van Rooyen, I'm sorry if I butcher your name. Apologies. Do you have any productivity hacks on how to read amendments? Oh yes, I do have those. Well, you can, for starters, you can filter amendments according to political groups. I mean, you know that some political groups, you will completely disagree with whatever they propose, so you can put minuses directly on it and maybe just do a quick check at the end just in case. You can check according to the name of the MEPs. Once you get to know them, you know that's more or less the position that they may have on different files. So by default, it will give you a hint. Okay, this MEP is doing an amendment. I'm quite likely not to like it, or I'm quite likely to like it. Depending on the text, you can prioritize the important part of the text. Like if you're dealing with a legislative text, the final articles are just procedure and all that. So don't care about this kind of amendments, and instead focus on the articles that are most critical. But yeah, there are a few productivity hacks to read amendments. Look for keywords as well. Keywords are useful as well to at least get a good idea. Usually when I read amendments, I go in several go. I will have a first reading, very quick, like filter out all those I know I'm 90%, 99% sure that I'm gonna put a minus on it, so I put a minus on it, and then I go layer by layer and refine the thing until I have like the amendments that are okay, I'm not sure, or I need like to carefully read them. And sometimes I have to confess I'm keen to put minuses on amendments that are extremely long. I mean, when you have an amendment that is 1 page long, I just want to put a minus just out of principle, because that's just not humane to do that. But there are also productivity hacks to do compromise amendments. I knew assistants that were actually printing the amendments and then cutting the amendment with scissors and papers in pieces, and basically put everything on the table and assemble the compromise 4GA compromise amendment with everything on the table. That's one way to do it, but yeah, I know that some do it like that. But in any case, that was it for the presentation. So if you have questions, go for it. If you want to see another slide that I add, or any question, do tell. Actually, quite a few people joined. Let me check. Alexa Frua, Alinor Gohan, Aten, Karoniki and Co. Okay. Karoniki and Co. Okay. Commander Root, Dan Brands, Van Rogen, Eurocat95, Audrey, I already saw you, Extramo, F2 Pair, Little Miss Daisy, Neganel, Nest. It's always complicated with a name. Nestorin, Sitting Gnome 225, and Twitch Details. Twitch Details. That's one name. Okay, but if you have questions, go. Little Miss Daisy, I'm not sure if you were an APA in 2020, but how was the work of an APA in confinement time? Well, I'm not an APA anymore, so I can't tell you how it works now. I can't give you an insider view on how it works right now, but from what I saw and been told, it's odd, of course, because they are not allowed to all be in the office at the same time. So you have a lot of home office, and they have to cycle like one by one who gets to the office according to who needs what. But it has not been simple for assistants. I mean, it has not been simple for everyone because you are forced to do home office, and that makes it complicated to separate like work life from actual life. I mean, it was already complicated when you were an assistant, but when your MEP is literally in your living room via video, that's even less easy. But no, I'm pretty sure that assistants look forward to the moment they will be able to go back to the office. Even if I expect the ways of working to evolve a bit, in the sense that teleworking will be maybe encouraged a bit more, and MEPs will be fine with it as long as people can perform their job. But yeah, that's pretty much what I had to say. I'm just checking. I see that other people are joined. So hi everyone. I mean, it's the end of the stream more or less, but okay. So if you don't have any more question, last chance before I go to my conclusion, because I was afraid of being too short with my presentation, but right on time. I mean, it's almost 10 o'clock. Quite happy with the result. But yeah, like I said, 10 o'clock, it's time, I think, to wrap up. So thanks a lot for joining tonight. I hope you learn things and maybe got interested in the job. If you're not, if you're curious at least about the position. Next week, I will attempt to have my first MEP interview on the channel. I already have like about a dozen positive answers from MEPs, but it's a matter of making it fit in the schedule. So I will let you know on Twitter and Discord how it pans out. But in any case, be sure to come back next week at 8:30. I will be there, whether for an interview or for something else. And on this note, I thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you to the new followers. And I wish you all a good night. See you next week.